So we're here today to talk about getting leaner, and obviously since people are here to hear about this, it's a struggle for a lot of us. So we're going to start off by talking about why is it so difficult? Any thoughts from the audience?
Genetics.
What?
Some genetics.
Genetics plays a role, absolutely. I come from a very heavy family and I have to be very, very careful. Lifestyle?
Well, like stress levels.
Okay, stress, absolutely.
Cookies.
Cookies? Cookies taste good, that's just a fact. Okay, and there's a lot of reasons, and one of the things, if people were in here who had to lose 100 pounds, there's some pretty simple answers, but that's not this audience. And so for us, it's more a case of getting the little things right. So we're going to talk about some of the reasons why it's difficult. Fat is a long-term fuel. Our bodies are designed to hold on to it. It's an extremely concentrated energy source. 1 gram of fat has 9 calories. A gram of protein or carbohydrate has 4. So it's 2.25 times as concentrated as the other primary energy sources we eat. So just a little bit of fat is a lot of energy. Carbohydrate is our body's preferred fuel. So our bodies like to store fat. They like to burn carbohydrate. The carbohydrate is stored right there in the muscle. It's always in the blood where it can be used very, very quickly, whereas fat is stored separately and takes a lot of time before we can start to use it. So we're going to talk first about the paradigm of weight loss that the weight loss industry in this country is built on, and why it doesn't work, especially why it doesn't work for athletes. So when we use strategies derived from this paradigm, we're set up for short-term success but long-term failure. Average weight regain 1 year after leaving a commercial weight loss facility in this country is 120% of what was lost. So lose 30 pounds, gain 36 back the next year. Lose 40, gain 48 back. So what are the basic philosophies of this paradigm? One is that people are lazy, they expend too few calories. And the second is they're gluttonous, they consume too many calories. And again, if you have 100 pounds to lose, that might be the case, but for us that's not. So we need to look at this from a different angle. So anybody here not as lean as they would like to be, but not lazy or gluttonous? Raise your hand. Any lazy or gluttonous people here? So for us, it's about getting a bunch of little things right. We're not people who eat 2 Big Macs for lunch and need to cut back to 1, but we need to learn to work with our bodies to train our bodies to preferentially burn fat and preferentially store carbohydrate. So a big part of the problem with the weight loss industry in this country is it's built around willpower. And no matter how motivated you are, that goes up and down for everybody. And we don't want to use a series of strategies that work when our willpower is high and don't work when our willpower is not high. So I want people to get away from relying on willpower. If you're lazy and gluttonous, some degree of willpower is required to do some activity and to not have 2 Big Macs for lunch. But again, that's not the case for us. So it's not that we're lacking willpower as much as that we're using ineffective strategies. Active people need different solutions than sedentary people. We need to fuel our activities. Everybody here swims and bikes and runs. We got to have fuel in our muscles and in our liver so that we can have good workouts. Doesn't do any good if you eat less and have bad workouts because of it. We need to maintain our fitness. We don't have as much weight to lose. If you have 100 pounds to lose, the first 70 is easier than the last 30. And generally, we're going to have more aggressive goals for our fitness and leanness than sedentary people will. So why don't strategies from the calories in, calories out paradigm work? The first, and this is the biggest, is that resting metabolic rate adjusts almost calorie for calorie to how much we eat. So if you eat 300 calories a day less, you'll lose some weight initially for a short period, but in about 14 days, your resting metabolic rate will adjust almost calorie for calorie. So you're 14 days later, you're burning 300 calories less at rest, and that sets up a bad long-term situation. Secondly, a calorie is not a calorie. Calories from protein, fat, and carbohydrate do very, very different things in our bodies. And these strategies are rooted in acute solutions to what is a chronic problem. So what works for a day or even for a week is not going to work for a month or a year or a lifetime. So we need to look more at chronic strategies rather than acute strategies. And with the strategies we use from the calories in, calories out paradigm, the changes in our body chemistry work against us. Physiologically, as we talked about, reduced resting metabolic rate, increased efficiency of fat storage. Our bodies become better at storing both fat calories and carbohydrate calories in our fat cells. Our hunger and satiety responses don't work as well. Fifth, you cannot starve a fat cell. That's the strategy of almost every weight loss program, is to starve a fat cell. And it doesn't work. Think about your car. It's sitting in your driveway with a half a tank of gas. And you can go a whole week and not put any gas in the tank. But if you don't drive it, how much gas is going to be in the tank?
Still going to be there.
A half a tank, yep. And the same thing with our fat cells. You can't starve fat, you have to burn it. When you try to starve a fat cell, you end up starving your muscle cells. And that's the biggest cause of the reduced resting metabolic rate. All right, so I love this. I heard this on the radio the other day. Did you ever try to stare down a chocolate chip cookie? I did last night. It took 2 hamburgers, a large pizza, and 3 slices of cheesecake. But I didn't eat that cookie until later. So when you use willpower to fight hunger and not eat, which is the basis of the calories in, calories out paradigm, 2 things can happen, both of which are bad. You try not to eat, and I'm sure this has happened to everybody in here. You try not to eat, but you're really, really hungry. Your willpower breaks down, and you overeat. When you break down and overeat, you tend not to make the best choices. That's not when we go for the turkey breast and the green beans. So when your willpower breaks down, you do things that make you fatter. Or your willpower holds up and you don't eat, and that activates the enzymes that store fat. So when men go for 5 hours or more, or ladies go for 4 hours or more without eating, the enzymes that take calories out of our blood and store them in our fat cells become activated. So if you go a long time without eating, even if you eat a very healthy meal, more of that very healthy meal is going to end up in your fat cells because you went too long without eating. Does that make sense to everybody? Not eating makes you fat. When you're hungry, it's a sign that your body needs fuel, so listen to it. So rather than the calories in, calories out paradigm, we want to look at a different one. So what is it we're trying to lose? To calories, pounds, muscle? No, of course not. It's fat. So the paradigm we want to look at is fat removed from storage versus fat added to storage. And this is a little more complicated. That's just how the human body is. So it's fat we're trying to lose. A gram of fat is a gram of fat. That's always the case, whereas a calorie is not a calorie. All right, so three things we need to look at to get an effective program of getting leaner together. First one is how you think. Second one is nutrition or food consumption. And the third one is exercise. We're going to look at each of those 3 areas a little bit. Athletes tend to be resistant to addressing changes in their thought processes. And this doesn't necessarily mean you have a problem. But anytime you're trying to make a change, you need to change your mind before you can change your body. So don't overlook this aspect. All right, so we're going to run through some of the commandments now. During the waking hours, eat at least every 5 hours, and ladies, every 4 hours. Sorry, ladies, you have it harder than guys do. It's an easier process for us. Build your diet around lean meats, fruits, and vegetables. Use processed foods primarily for post-workout refueling. So the concentrated carbohydrates, bread, cereal, pasta, rice, potatoes, and sugar, think of those as fuel, not as food. And don't make those staples of your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but have those after workouts to refill the muscles and the liver with the carbohydrate that you just burned. Except immediately before and during workouts, consume protein every time you eat. Pay particular attention to protein consumption at breakfast. What are our typical breakfast foods? Cereal,
Eggs.
bagels. What are our protein sources at breakfast? Eggs, bacon, sausage, 60%, 70%, and 80% fat. So finding a lean protein source at breakfast is a huge part. So when we don't get enough protein, there's a lot of bad things that happens. That's a big part of our decreased resting metabolic rate because we lose muscle mass when our protein intake is inadequate. Also, the protein is important because when we eat protein with carbohydrate, it slows the digestion and absorption of the carbohydrate. So we get a steady increase in blood sugar rather than a spike. And so when we eat protein with carbohydrate, less of that carbohydrate is going to go into our fat cells. So those concentrated carbohydrates we want to eat primarily after workouts, not having them generally as breakfast, lunch, and dinner, unless breakfast, lunch, and dinner fall after a workout. So insulin response, how to make yourself fat, hungry, and tired. So when we eat concentrated carbohydrates by themselves, they digest very, very, very quickly. It's even the most complex carbohydrate is just a string of sugars tied together. It's a very simple molecule, and it goes into our bloodstream very quickly. That causes our blood sugar to spike, and our body secretes insulin. When our blood sugar gets high, that can be very dangerous. So our bodies secrete insulin to take sugar out of the blood and store it either in the muscles or the liver or the fat cells. So unfortunately, our bodies tend to overreact. So you eat a bagel, and that sugar goes rushing into the blood. Your body secretes insulin to take that sugar from the bagel out of the blood and store it likely in the fat cells. But we tend to secrete too much insulin. So now your blood sugar is low again, which makes you hungry. And when you're hungry from low blood sugar, guess what you crave? Some kind of starch or sugar. And so you set up this cycle where you're storing fat, making yourself hungry. So eat carbohydrates, store fat, fluctuating energy levels, hunger, and feelings of loss of control. When you're hungry for a physiological reason, you're going to eat. And if we try to use willpower to fight that, that's a losing battle. So fewer than 5% of human generations have had the ability to grow our own food. Forget process it, even to grow it. And so our ability to grow and process food has evolved way faster than our gut's ability to digest and absorb it. So basically, again, we should use those concentrated carbohydrates that are processed as post-workout refueling only and not make them staples in our diet. Eat a moderately low-fat diet. Again, fat is the most concentrated energy source, 2.25 times as many calories per gram as carbohydrate or protein. Also, when we eat more fat, our metabolic rate doesn't increase as a result. When we eat more protein or more carbohydrate, it does. We also tend to eat a lot more calories when we eat high-fat foods. If you take groups and let them eat as much as they can and observe them, when you put high-fat foods out for them to self-select, they'll eat a lot more calories than when you put moderate-fat foods out, and they'll eat a lot more calories eating moderate-fat foods than when choosing from low-fat foods. So again, because of the caloric density, we're going to eat a lot more calories when we eat higher-fat foods. Also, we exercise less and we're less active when we eat high-fat foods. Fat digests very, very slowly. It takes about 9 hours to digest fat. So it sits in your stomach and just brings on feelings of lethargy. Yeah?
Question. On the previous slide, can you give us an example of the foods? Like I'm getting it, but then I'm trying to compare foods of what would I eat and not eat.
Well, if you put fried chicken out on a table, and we watch people, and you see how much they eat, and you calculate how many calories they eat, and you put grilled chicken out on the table. You let them eat as much as they want. They're going to eat way fewer calories of the grilled chicken. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you.
Also, when we eat a higher fat diet, our bodies get really, really good at storing fat. The enzymes that take calories out of the blood and store them in the fat cells proliferate. So we have a lot more of what our bodies need to store fat. So extreme low-fat diets are not necessary or beneficial. We want to get about 20% of calories from fat, and if you go from 40 to 30, you're going to get a lot leaner as a result. If you go from 30 to 20, you're going to get a lot leaner as a result. Going down from 20 to 10, people don't get any leaner, and it's very, very difficult to do, so we see lower compliance. So super, super low-fat diets are neither necessary nor beneficial.
Can you explain
Yes.
the last item?
Okay. When you eat an extreme low-fat diet, a lot of our hormones are built from fat. And when you eat an extremely low-fat diet, you get less production of human growth hormone. And there's two main purposes. It helps build muscle and tissues. That's why it's called human growth hormone. It's also a very strong fat burning. It triggers a higher proportion of fat burning both during exercise and at rest. So that's why it lowers the metabolic rate, because you lose muscle as a result. And then decreases fat burning because of the reduced secretion of HGH.
So you can end up with less muscle and more fat.
Yes. And that's when you go to an extreme, we're looking at below 10% of calories from fat there. Throughout the year, perform the majority of aerobic exercise at light intensity. Our slow twitch muscle fibers, our endurance fibers, are the only ones that can burn a significant amount of fat. And we use them when we're going really, really easy. When we speed up, our body shifts over to burning a lot more sugar and a lot less fat. It takes more sugar, it takes more oxygen to burn fat than it does sugar. So when we go even medium hard, our body shifts over to burning more sugar. So most of our training should be very, very easy. Very few people do their endurance training slow enough. And that's not just for getting leaner, but for improvement in performance. So when you're going to work on speed, work on speed. When you go work on endurance or fat burning, work on just that and go really slow.
So is that lower aerobic?
Yes, yes. Zone 2, yep. Also, you train your body to be more efficient at burning fat by training in zone 2, and those adaptations don't just go away when you click out of the pedals or take your running shoes off. So you'll burn a higher percentage of fat 24 hours a day as a result of doing your long, slow distance work, long and slow. During appropriate times of the year, perform high-intensity strength training workouts for all the major muscle groups. And unfortunately, we're kind of coming out of that season now, since our triathlon season is getting ready to start. But strength training will improve performance in swimming, cycling, and running. But also, it's a major component of raising the resting metabolic rate. So if you burn more calories 24 hours a day, it's a big part of getting leaner, and strength training contributes to that a lot. 1 pound of muscle burns 35 to 75 calories a day while at rest. So even if you sit on the couch all day, if you have more muscle, your body's going to burn more calories. So if you multiply it out, adding 5 pounds of muscle increases your metabolic rate by 63,000 plus to 133,000 plus calories per year. So over the long haul, a few extra pounds of muscle is going to raise your resting metabolic rate enough to make a very big difference. So take the strength training as triathletes, mostly in the off season, but take it very seriously. Strength training also triggers human growth hormone secretion, which makes our bodies burn a lot more fat, and that's a short-term thing that lasts for a few hours post-workout, after a strength training workout. During appropriate times of the year, include high-intensity aerobic exercise. This is lactate threshold training, or hard, steady efforts, and aerobic capacity training, which is intervals. Now this type of workout burns almost entirely sugar, but it makes changes in our body that are going to help you get leaner. We see a greater afterburn. After very hard workouts, our bodies continue to burn more calories even after we've stopped working out for a few hours. And also, there are some changes in the muscle cells that raise our resting metabolic rate as a result of the very high intensity aerobic training. Increased consumption of water, fiber, and warm foods and drinks to manage appetite. Again, when you're hungry, eat. But this is a way of making sure you don't overeat. Water has both volume and weight, so it stretches the walls of the stomach as well as the tissues that hold the stomach up. And fiber has a lot of volume, so it stretches the walls. And warm foods and drinks raise your core body temperature. When you get cold, you get hungry. So those are some key ways of managing appetite. And again, maintain core body temperature to manage appetite. This time of year, be really careful. Don't go out running in shorts and a singlet, even though you're dying to feel the sun on your skin. Because when we get cold, we get hungry. And another thing with triathletes is after morning swim workouts, really take steps to warm yourself up. Jump in the sauna for 5 minutes or get a really hot shower, because the water in the pool is going to lower your core body temperature, and that is going to make you hungrier. So, exercise for body fat reduction. Three different types we want to do. Aerobic threshold is fat burning. Again, that's very, very easy. Lactate threshold is just under your red line. Hard, steady efforts. And interval training, where you go hard for usually 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and then easy for an equal period. So, any questions? Yes?
Instead of like breakfast cereals and stuff, what would you recommend for breakfast?
It's tough because our typical breakfast foods, there aren't any good ones. There are a couple of breakfast cereals out now that are high protein and high fiber. One's called Kashi Go Lean. That's one a lot of people really like, and switching over to that is good. Yogurt is a good choice. You could have the cereal with a protein shake, or getting a leaner meat, like there are some very lean cuts of ham that can be a breakfast food, and have that along with the cereal. So it's not that cereal is evil, we just want a high protein source with it. Egg beaters, if you like them, are a really good choice. Eggs are a good source of protein, but they're 60% fat, and that's just, that kind of offsets the benefit of the protein.
I like to make up my own oatmeal. Does oatmeal fall in that bad cereal category?
It is, and again, it's not that oatmeal's evil. You just need to get some protein with it. The Quaker is making a high protein, high fiber oatmeal now, which tastes good.
If I eat it with low-fat yogurt,
Well, yogurt is a good balance of protein and carbs itself. So it's a good breakfast food, but you can't count on the protein in the yogurt to balance another carbohydrate source, because it's got its own carbs.
How many grams of protein are you looking at having?
Somewhere around 15 to 25, depending upon your size.
What do you recommend eating late at night? Like if you're finishing a workout around 8 o'clock and you've got to be in bed about an hour after your workout, how do you recommend handling it?
Part of it depends on what the workout is. If it's a hard workout, you need the carbs afterwards. Also, would you have had a meal before the workout, or would you just be having a really late dinner?
Do you have like a snack like an hour before at like some Greek yogurt or something?
So kind of like a two-part dinner. Just a serving of starch, and then lean meats and fruits and vegetables, but just less, since it's kind of only half a meal for you.
You mentioned zone 2 earlier. What are you referring to there?
Zone 2 is just below aerobic threshold, and aerobic threshold is the intensity where we're going hard enough to cause our body to recruit all of the slow twitch or endurance fibers, but none of the speed fibers. So it's just an intensity, you very, very easy, you feel like you could go all day.
So out of how many zones do you work?
Well, I use, and most people do, the zones that were outlined by Joe Friel in his training Bible. So it has 1 through 5, and then there's 5A, B, and C. If you email me if you want to, if you would like some more information on zone training. And here's our contact information is info@leanforalifetime.com. And we've got lots of articles on different topics that we covered today. So if there's any particular area you'd like some more information on, feel free to jettison email and we'll send you an article on that.
But what is the correct way to read, like a label for the calories?
That's the big thing with the label reading is you want to look at the percentages of calories from fat, and the labels now have fat calories and total calories, and you just divide that out to estimate what the percentage is, and then look at the protein source as well.
So if you got to pick the right ratio for just kind of eating every day, you've heard this 40-30-30 mix, what would be your numbers?
Well, I think we need 2 different paradigms of nutrition as athletes. We need breakfast, lunch, and dinner to fill our basal needs, and I like about 50, 25, 25. So somewhere in that range. And then an entirely different paradigm for workout refueling. So on a day you're doing a 5-hour bike ride and then a 2-hour run, your percentage of carbohydrate is going to be much, much, much higher, even though your breakfast, lunch, and dinner don't need to be different. Does that make sense? So somewhere around 50, 25, 25, just to fill our basal needs, and then about 80% carbohydrate for the post-workout refueling. All right, and we got to wrap up because we're trying to stay on schedule. I have a booth out here. I'll be here till 5, so if anybody has more questions, come see me there. Thank you.
Right, Ben Murphy, folks. Thank you, Jen, for being here. Thank you very much.